Wheelie time!
Right, so the 701 Supermoto from Husqvarna. I think there's a perception that if you ride one of these you are a hooligan, but you don't have to be. So if you've come to this video looking for wheelies and backing into corners and general silliness like that, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed. I'm just going to review this bike as I would do with any of the others and see if it is a good all-round bike. What's it like as a general bike for maybe some of us that don't have those skills, if I'm being honest. I'm not saying that the front wheel hasn't left the ground on this, it's just that I'm not going to be doing great big long controlled wheelies. Okay, so what is this package all about? Well, it's 70 odd horsepower, plenty of torque, gobfuls of torque, in a very light package. I'll put the figures on the screen because I can't remember them, but it's about 71 brake horsepower, roughly the same in pound-foot of torque, and we're around the 145 kilo mark for the weight of the bike. And boy does it show. Now, I said admittedly you don't need to be a hooligan to ride this. It does help, but if you're not a hooligan, you probably soon will be after you jump onto one of these. I'll tell you what it reminds me of. If anybody's seen the film Over the Hedge, it reminds me of that dog in the garden. It is such a beautifully precise machine. If you put that power and that torque together with the lightweight, the WP suspension and the super grippy tyres, it's hard to fault. Now, one of the things that's improved in this new motor, which has got the twin balancer shafts, that extra balancer shaft does make a big difference in the vibrations. It still vibrates like an Ann Summers Stockroom, but it's not as harsh as it would have been on the older bikes and something like the older 690 KTMs. The riding position is nice, it's big and tall, you sit up, vision is great, with the exception of the mirrors. And unless you're riding in town or an urban scenario, you may as well just take these off, because once you get going there's so much vibration in them you can't see what's going on. Not only do you not see much out of the mirrors, but you tend to be hanging on for grim death to the bars once you get going. In terms of creature comforts, well, you've got a long saddle. The fuel tank sits down underneath the frame and is filled from the rear. In terms of kit that you've got in front of you, well, it's minimal. You've got a speedometer, you've got an odometer, you have a trip meter, 2 trip meters actually, a fuel warning light, the ABS light, neutral, engine oil and indicators. That's it. No rev counter. Oh, and a clock, don't forget the clock. But you've got no rev counter, you've got no gear selector, nothing. It is stripped back and basic. As I say, no fuel gauge, you just get a little orange light pops up to say that you're low on fuel, and you've probably got 20 to 25 miles of range left to be able to go and find somewhere to fuel up. The suspension, although it does feel a little bit firm initially, is adjustable. You've got compression and rebound damping on the front that you can change up, so a little bit of playing around with that will get you where you need to be. But it is a pretty comfortable ride. I've got no real complaints about the ride, to be honest. The only thing that does become an issue, and it's something that I've noticed, is that this seat is pretty hard. It is like sitting on a stair rail. So after about an hour and a half, you're going to be looking for an excuse to get off and have a walk around and just give your backside a little bit of a rest. But that's what this bike is. It's not a touring bike. Creature comforts are not too bad. You do have hand guards on the bike, backed up with the aluminium support, so it's not just the plastic arm. One other last thing about the instrument cluster you might spot during this video, that I find that indicator button quite hard to read. Not so bad today where it's quite overcast, but on days where it was sunny, I tended to find that I would leave the indicator on because it's not a hugely positive click on the control here. And a couple of times I've thought I've switched it off and looked down and realised actually that it's still blinking away. Other things to look at: single Brembo disc on the front, and the stopping power of this disc is superb. You've got light couple of fingers on there and bang, you're stopping. You've got a Magura hydraulic clutch which makes the clutch action really nice and light. No issues with that whatsoever. And a nice short Magura clutch lever as well, adjustable for reach. Now this is not really the sort of bike that I would normally review. Not that I dislike them, I've enjoyed watching Supermoto racing, but it's not really the style of the bike that I would particularly choose. And it only came about because I was talking to Husqvarna about reviewing the Svartpilen, and they said we haven't got one for a little while. In the meantime, do you want to take something else out? I had looked at the 701 Enduro, and then I saw this sitting in the corner and I thought actually this could be quite an interesting thing to get on, and I have to say I have been pleasantly surprised. Getting back onto a light bike like this after riding the Tiger is just, you know, phenomenal. And it is a hell of a lot of fun. It's also not a particularly intimidating bike to ride. As long as you're are careful with that right hand, there's no problems at all. So we're in third gear here at 30 miles an hour. You'd expect it to start chugging away, but as we ride through Pleshy, you can see it's quite tractable. It's not really complaining about this. If I wanted to suddenly give it a right hand of gas here, then yeah, it's going to complain a little bit, but it's pretty relaxed and controlled. Now, although this bike is quite focused in terms of what it is a nice general purpose bike to ride. So riding around the country lanes like this is really good. Riding it in urban scenarios would be just as much fun. It's so flickable, so light, and you can change direction so quickly on it that it's actually pretty much perfect wherever. The only area where it starts to become tiresome is on motorways. Now it will go along a fair old lick, and you can cruise along at 80 miles an hour in this with no problems whatsoever, but it is a little bit uncomfortable. It is vibrating quite a bit underneath you, and you're getting the full blast of the wind. One other comment about the handling are these tyres. The Conti Attack tyres are fantastic. They are stickier than a 2-year-old's fingers at a birthday party, and I haven't tried them in the wet. I don't know what they're like on that, but in dry tarmac they are incredible. I'm also at the point where I'm not entirely sure where I am now. Right, whilst we're stuck behind these, let's just have a quick summary of the bike. If you're in the market for a Supermoto, then you'll know this bike and you know its competition, you'll know where it stacks up, and you'll be hard pushed to find anything better. If, like me, you're not really a massive Supermoto fan, but you want something that's fun and light to ride, then this is perfect. I couldn't have this as my only bike because purely from a practical point of view, but for scratching around the back lanes and filtering through urban traffic, it's an absolute delight. And when you're out on these lanes scratching around, it's such good fun. Right, let's cut off that main road and get through North End, and lovely little village. And actually for me, and I'm not frightened to admit it, always makes me feel a little bit sad coming through here, because this was the home of the late Keith Flint, frontman for The Prodigy, a band that I've followed since the early 90s, been a massive part of my life, huge fan of those. So it's very sad when Keith passed away, and his house is just down that lane there, and yeah, very sad situation. And that just makes me think, guys, if you've got problems, if you're worried about something, if something's bothering you, just talk to somebody. And the same if you see some of your mates that maybe not quite as they are or as they should be, just have a word with them, ask them if they're okay. It's important. Men don't talk about it enough, and mental health issues are something that are relatively close to me. So when Keith decided he'd had enough and was going to take his own life, it was a shock to everybody and very sad, but it brought home the problem that a lot of men have, and it just doesn't get talked about enough. Sorry for that little sidetrack there, but it's something I recorded whilst I was out riding and it was important to me. I wanted to get it off my chest, so I decided to leave it in the video. I hope this video has been useful and you've enjoyed watching it. Unfortunately, I did have a problem with a corrupt memory card, so there's some footage which I couldn't include in the video, and by the time I realised that, the bike had already gone back to Husqvarna. So if you've got any questions, you know where to leave them down below, and all that leaves me to say is until next time, thanks for watching, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.